I think Councillor McNulty and some other councillors are there.
Thank you, councillors, for the opportunity to just have a question and answer session on the Rainbow Action Plan. It's coming. It's planned to come to you on September the 4th, and we're just going to give you a quick update on that so you can be across that before you see the paper. So I'll hand over to Lily. Lily's been leading this piece of work, and she will just run through a few PowerPoint presentation, and then we're going to take some questions and answers. Thanks.
Kia ora, councillors. I'll just introduce very quickly what the Rainbow Action Plan is about. So for a bit of context, why are we introducing a Rainbow Action Plan? The amendment was passed when developing the strategy and policy work program for this triennium, and the amendment was passed to confirm that the Rainbow Strategy is completed at the latest by mid-2025. And so we are presenting a Rainbow Action Plan to address this amendment by specifying what the Council is delivering for Rainbow communities within our existing work programs and budgets. And for a bit of more strategic context, no council at the moment in New Zealand has a strategy, policy or plan specifically about the Rainbow community. WCC does not have an overarching strategy for diversity or inclusion for the community, but we have documents for specific community groups, such as the Strategy for Children and Young People, Accessible Wellington Action Plan, and our Positive Ageing Policy. And the Council has also adopted strategic positions to do with community inclusion. So in our social wellbeing framework in 2021, this describes the Council's role in social wellbeing, and inclusive is described as different communities are acknowledged and celebrated, and there's a strong sense of belonging. So the Rainbow Action Plan fits into what we've already adopted, and similarly with the strategic approach that's been adopted in the 2024 long-term plan, making our city accessible and inclusive for all. And what we're saying is that we're creating a future where everyone can easily find information, use services and participate in the city. All Wellingtonians feel valued, respected and empowered to engage in city life, and working in an inclusive way means our differences are our strengths. So what do we know about the rainbow population in Wellington? So we've been able to look at some of our existing data sources and surveys, and the Census 2023 was the first time that it collected rainbow data. So it asked respondents questions about minority sexuality, intersex and transgender, and rainbow is defined as any respondents selecting any of those. So what we know about Wellington is that there's a great proportion of rainbow people, or those identifying as rainbow. That's 11.3% of the resident population that age 15 years and older. And that there's a concentration of those identifying as rainbow in the Lambton General Ward with 19%. And comparatively, nationally, this proportion is 4.9%. And so what we know is that this is confirming our general understanding that a lot of rainbow populations tend to be concentrated in metro areas, so Auckland also does have quite a high proportion as well. We also know that the rainbow population in Wellington tends to be young. 60.6% of the rainbow population is between 15 and 29 years. That's more than nationally. We also know that there are some differences in outcomes for the rainbow population in Wellington. And when we compare even with non-rainbow respondents in the census in the 15 to 29-year-old age group to control for any age influence on response, rainbow respondents are more likely to be disabled or report having at least one activity limitation. They're somewhat less likely to own their own home, and they're somewhat more likely to report being unemployed. And these differences were generally more pronounced in the transgender and non-binary subgroup. And then when we're looking at our residents monitoring survey, when we're comparing to non-rainbow in the under 30-year-old age gap group, Rainbow respondents reported somewhat lower quality of life, feeling less safe in the central city after dark, but also a somewhat more positive view of WCC performance, more agreement that WCC makes decisions in the best interest of the city, and being twice as likely to attend cultural or arts events in Wellington more than once a month, being more likely to visit Wellington attractions such as the Wellington Museum, Cable Car or Space Place, and generally a greater feeling of being welcome and included in cultural events and activities. This is just a snapshot of what we know about the rainbow population, and we need to do more research in this area, especially for some of our minority subgroups, such as our transgender non-binary population that may experience more disadvantage than the overall rainbow population, and also for some other minority groups such as rainbow people of colour, who have slightly smaller sample sizes, and so there's some less certainty about their findings in surveys. So how was the action plan developed? We have engaged with the Takataipui Rainbow Advisory Council, or TRAC, between September 2024 and July 2025, and have considered what they've said so far in some of their submissions about what their priorities are for the City for Rainbow people from their lived experience. We've worked with business units within the council to identify work programs that may fit with some of these priorities and articulate ways that they can help to deliver more rainbow inclusion. And we shared some draft actions with TRAC, the two rainbow organisations, Inside Out and Gender Minorities, that the council already has relationships with, interested councillors, and the feedback we got was generally positive. And we are focusing on practical actions that we can deliver within existing programs and budgets. And then aligning the action plan in the future with long-term planning rounds and usual processes. So the action plan has been arranged in 5 focus areas, reflecting priority areas or PO that TRAC have identified as important for rainbow inclusion. These areas are safety, making sure that the city is safe for rainbow communities from crime, violence and harms. This includes housing. Community, providing opportunities to build community connections through events, and providing inclusive recreation and community facilities. Visibility, normalising and celebrating diverse rainbow communities, making rainbow history and identity visible throughout the city. Intersectionality and equity, so uplifting the voices of intersectional, and that means those with multiple forms of disadvantage. Rainbow communities, and providing fair opportunities for rainbow communities that might experience multiple forms of marginalisation. And inclusive council operations, making sure that the council operates within itself in inclusive ways, such as supporting upskilling staff, running public meetings, and communicating. And the actions are in these categories: research and evaluation of the planet and the rainbow community itself. And safety includes safe public places, harm prevention, housing, and in community inclusive spaces and places, including public toilets, changing rooms, community facilities. That's where the bulk of the actions are, as they're front-facing to the community. And connection and form events. Visibility, there's celebrating diversity and also in city design. Intersectionality, equity, we have uplifting voices and equitable opportunities. And in inclusive council operations, we have staff capability training, democracy and communications. Great, I'll open the floor to any questions.
Thank you, Lily. First, acknowledging Councillor McNulty again, and Councillor Randall, who is online. If you have any question, let us know. I will start with Councillor Punnett, and I will come to you, Councillor Ray. And just, it's not a warning, but I think that just make sure any of the question we ask in a very constructive way, and aware of how sometimes the little things can be, the sensitivity, and just making sure all of us will be respectful to the community that's listening to us. I'll start with you, Councillor.
Thank you, and thank you for your excellent work on this. Really appreciate it. First question I had, last track meeting, there was some feedback that it was important to talk to Rainbow members who are also members of our ethnic communities. Did you happen to have at least a little bit of a chance to do that, talk to some people?
So we have noted this, and this is what we're planning to do in the next iteration of the action plan, just because we are cognizant that at this stage the focus is just on to getting an action plan drafted, but we have in our work plan to engage with those Rainbow organisations that work with ethnic communities.
Okay, I'll have a look at the paper, yeah. The next question I had, thank you for sharing an early draft, is that I did see that some of the things we were committing to were already doing, or they were more applicable to the whole population. They weren't specifically tailored to our rainbow community. So I was just wondering if there's just been a bit more of a editing, just to make sure that it is very specifically towards this group of people.
Yes, I have noted that, and I've made it more tailored to the rainbow community where possible, and taken out any actions that were general to the wider population.
And just my last question, I just did see that there were some gaps in, I think you did cover the CCOs, but Māori strategic partnerships, other advisory groups, Te Awa Māpara. Did you just happen to have a chance to see if there was anything that could be added in there?
I have passed those comments on to the relevant business units, and they will get back to me on some of those. I have reached out to Mā Tahu Aranui, and at the moment there are no specific work programs in scope, but this doesn't preclude looking at it in the future.
Thank you, Lily. Councillor Chang.
Yeah, I've got a few questions and quite happy to sort of go on the list again. If I'm wondering how many of these things, these objectives and action points that we actually want to have, how many of those can be integrated into our current facilities? Like, for example, we have the new toilet block in Inglewood Place. I think there's 6 toilets there. So is it possible that one of them could be reserved or saved for the rainbow community if they feel that they need something, sort of different? No, just as an example. Probably easier if I ask you one thing at a time rather than a whole list of questions.
So the actions that we have in public toilets are for future designs, so that all future public toilet provisions will be non-gendered, and that's also implementing policy that's in other strategies such as Te Whai Oranga and Te Awa Māpara. So it's designed for future facilities.
What does that actually mean? Does it mean that, like, what's the difference in design? Like, can we, like the ones that we've got in Taranaki Street, are they not suitable? Are they not convertible, or what is it?
You do know that those are designed to the standard that we would expect. So as we are working through upgrading the things like public toilets and changers, we would look at ensuring that they are all gender, so that they're not exclusively a single gender. So we would look at that. So as we're doing that, we would ensure that that's one of the key deliverables in this, to ensure that people can participate freely within our public facilities, our normal sports and our community facilities.
Cool, thank you. What is your other question, Councillor?
Okay. You also mentioned looking at some of the detail you've got down here. You talk about the relationship between visiting, more of the council facilities, and I'm wondering if there's any correlation between that and the other consideration that many of them are unemployed. So would it be because they have more time to actually go to these things, or is that actually related, or is there any link between these things?
I think within the context of, for example, the residents monitoring survey, we only have statistical data, so we can't dig into the details of reasons for why or potential solutions. And so that's why we propose to perform more research to have more detailed insights.
Because what I'm thinking is that if they go into more of these different facilities, and I can't remember which ones they are now, but if they go into more of those, does that mean that we should actually ensure that those facilities have the toilet design and things, to suit them as well, or do we actually, are we looking at that, or are we looking at just so many in Wellington? How does that actually work?
Yeah, I think you're asking some of the questions. My understanding is that you're talking about visibility, and that's more of a holistic way instead of going into the detail of it. And if you want to know more of that, I think probably Lily will give you a bit of time after this. And then if you want to ask in the whole strategic level how this action plan gonna fit into the whole strategy, very happy to be addressed in this meeting, in this briefing. But if you want to go a bit detailed, I'm sure Lily will be happy to sit aside, put a time aside.
Yeah, okay.
And do you have another question? One last one.
Yep, one last one. What's the input of our Rainbow Advisory Group on this? Like, where do they fit in?
That I can answer that on behalf of Lily. Because Lily has worked extensively with that advisory group over the last 6 or 8 months, working regularly with them, so that we've listened actively to their input. And taken that input and worked with our business units, so that those things are that has been a very positive part of that.
Okay, great, thanks.
Councillor Foon.
I just wanted to ask about the CCOs, and I know that we can't, ask them to do things, but they're actually doing some great work. So how are we incorporating them into the action plan, or feeding back this, working with them on the strategy?
So there are a couple of actions, including CCOs, and we do have a role because we have a partnership and agreement with them. So recorded are the actions that Wellington Basin Reserve to continue to achieve their Rainbow Tick accreditation, and to then explore the Rainbow Tick accreditation for Experience Wellington in the cable car. But did you mean that they would have a greater input?
Oh, more that Wellington Zoo's already got the Rainbow Tick, and so just while we're going forward, I think, will there be a place to provide, a snapshot of how Wellington looks, so that we can see what has been done?
Yes, so that's the intention in this document, that it would also record some of the wins for WCC and Rainbow Inclusion,
Great.
as well as the things that we're working towards. So some of the actions will also include some of the already good work that's going on.
Yeah, great. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, go, Councillor Deputy Mayor Foon.
Just in those actions, I know that the council passed a resolution for Berhampore to have an artwork. So will that be mentioned as part of the action plan strategy for visibility?
So this will be mentioned in the covering paper, but because the final artwork itself is going to be decided in a committee decision next year, it won't be recorded as an action, but it will be recorded in the paper as something that will be pending committee decision.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Just one question from me is just regardless to normalizing visibility, how do you manage when it comes to the process of that normalization of visibility compared to how sometimes that feed into actually accelerating hit? Because that's not the intention, but sometimes you just do it. And when you see the Berhampore one, I think the big issue came after council actually decided to paint it over instead. I'm not just saying council to be breaking any laws, but how do you manage some of those things?
That's a very good question. And I may not have a full answer to that today, but the argument for visibility is to normalise its presence in civic society. So whether that's in designs in public space or on the internet and public communications, of course that doesn't always go perfectly, but the intent is to make it a part of normal dialogue and a normal part of public life.
Thank you. If no more questions, I think this is the last part, right? Do you have any more? Or is it from you, Jeff? Yeah. Cool. I don't see any other questions, but thank you so much. It looks really good. Yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, councillors.
Thank you.